Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again for another Greek word study. The word of the day for today is heretic, which comes from the Greek word Hairetikos. It only appears once in the Bible in the New Testament, and that's in Titus chapter 3 and verse 10. There's another word, heresies, that appears a handful of times. So we're going to take a look at that word in the Greek as well. And there are a couple other words that are related words. These words, one comes from another, and there's about 4 of them that are all synonymous. They're all synonyms, have similar meanings. So we're going to take a look at all of those. We'll start now with Titus 3:10. So let's go to the text, and we'll start in the King James Bible. And in Titus 3:10 it says, "A man that is an heretic after the first and second admonition reject." And we'll just swap it over now for our Greek text. And you'll see right there it says Hairetikon. It's just another form of the word Hairetikos, and it's translated as a factious man. A factious man after one and a second admonition reject. So we come over here now to our Strong's Concordance, and we're going to see, starting with numbers 138, 139, 140, and 141. These are all words that have to do with heresy and heretic. So 141 is the word Hairetikos, and that's the word that's translated as heretic in Titus 3 verse 10. And you see that it says from the same as 140. So 140, Hairetizo, which means to make a choice. These two come from the same word. And this says it's a derivative of 138. So heretic over here means a schismatic. A schismatic. Hairetikos is a schismatic, and it's from the same root as 140, Hairetizo, which means to make a choice. And Hairetizo comes from 138. So both of these words here, 140 and 141, Hairetizo and Hairetikos, they both come from 138. So 140 means to make a choice, and 141, Hairetikos, means a schismatic. And they both come from 138, aireomai. And that says to prefer, to take for oneself, for example, to prefer, to choose. Some of the forms are borrowed from a cognate of elomai, which is otherwise obsolete. So this means to take for oneself or to choose. We have 139, airesis. That's the word that's always translated as heresies. And it says a choice. Disunion, heresy. When we come over here now, this is just a Greek concordance to the New Testament. It's going to show us all the verses that these words appear in. So that's that word again, 138, aireomai. And see how it's translated in Philippians 1:22. What I shall choose, I wot not. Aireomai, heretic and heresies come from aireomai, and it's translated as what I shall choose. Shall choose is aireomai. In 2 Thessalonians 2:13, this verse says that God hath from the beginning chosen you unto salvation. Chosen comes from the Greek word aireomai. Hebrews 11:25, choosing rather to suffer. Choosing, translated from aireomai. So I hope you're starting to kind of catch the drift here. Airesis, again, this is the word that's always translated as heresies. It's also translated as sect, as you see here in Acts 5:17, which is the sect of the Sadducees, certain of the sect of the Pharisees, of the sect of the Nazarenes. So airesis is always translated as sect. Sect, you can remember what that word means. Basically, if you think of the word section, it's a section. It's translated in other places, I think in the Septuagint, as a section of the choir in the Old Testament. So here we see straightest sect of our religion. 1 Corinthians 11 and 19, there must also be heresies. There it's translated as heresies. Galatians 5:20, strife, seditions, heresies. 2 Peter 2 and 1, shall bring in damnable heresy. So come over to the word study in the Complete Biblical Library here, talking about the classical Greek. It says, among classical authors, airesis has two basic meanings. One concerns a taking of something, such as a city. The other, related to the verb aireo, to choose, involved choice, election, selection. The range of meaning includes the direction of the choice, thus purpose, course of action, decision, or the sect, party, or group that was a consequence of the choice, according to Liddell and Scott. In the Septuagint, it says, only 5 instances of airesis are attested to in the Septuagint. Of these, only 2 have an identifiable Hebrew counterpart, and 2 lack Hebrew at all. Twice in Leviticus, it describes the free will offering, so there's another choice. In Nehemiah, it describes the 2 sections of the choir. So this word is used to describe sections or a sect, or a party or a group, and it has to do with a choice. Similarly, in 1 Maccabees, it refers to 2 parties in a treaty agreement. And then in the New Testament, it says there are 9 occurrences of airesis in the New Testament. It is non-pejorative sense. In a non-pejorative sense, it describes the religious sects of the Sadducees, Pharisees. Those are in Acts 5 and Acts 15. In Nazarenes in Acts 24:5, it says the way, for example, Christianity, which was known as the Christian way or the way, the hodos, was called a sect or a party by Paul's Jewish opponents. It would be wrong in any of these texts to see in airesis any hint of the latter idea of heresies, which are deviations from orthodoxy. So what it's saying is that originally in the Greek, classical Greek usage of the word, it didn't have any type of a negative connotation. That came later. This was just used to describe certain political parties, sections, things like that. Any type of a party was a sect or a section. And it didn't have a negative connotation until we get into the New Testament. It says, however, in Galatians 5:20, Paul apparently had something different in mind, and it is probably from this text that heresy acquired such a negative meaning. He said that factions are the product of the sinful nature in Galatians 5:19. Contributing even more to the negative perception of airesis is 2 Peter 2:1, a forecast of secretly introduced destructive heresies. Such heresies are characterized by their denial of Christ, shameful lifestyles, and greed, in verses 2-3. The behavior of such heretics brings the gospel into disrepute and shame. However, their disobedience will not go unpunished. Their destruction is imminent, according to verse 3. So that's 2 Peter 2, in verses 1-3. So basically, what we're seeing is that a heretic is one that takes and chooses for himself. And in the New Testament usage of the word, it began to have a negative connotation. It's talking about biblical doctrine, one that takes a doctrine of the Bible and says, you know what, I don't really like that. I think I'm going to choose what I want in its place. And not only that, when we go over and look at what it says with respect to the Complete Biblical Library and its word study with respect to the word Hairetikos, it talks more about an attitude and one that's argumentative. So we're going to look up Hairetikos now. And it says, Hairetikos in classical Greek denotes one who chooses or one who chooses correctly. In later usage, it also denotes one who chooses a particular group over other groups. And then in the New Testament, it says the substantive form of this word in the New Testament often refers to an identifiable subgroup of the Jews within the religious establishment in Jerusalem. We therefore find references to the sect of the Sadducees and Pharisees and even of the Christians. Later Christian usage began to develop the idea of Hairetikos, not only being a subgroup but a sinful group who willfully separated themselves from Christian orthodoxy. The sense is of a group that was factious and argumentative, in which caused divisions within the church. The major emphasis was not necessarily on doctrinal error, as on the desire to divide the church with arguments. Hairetikos functions this way in Titus 3:10. That's where it's talking about a man that is an heretic after the first and second admonition reject. Words related to the same idea are found in 1 Corinthians 11:9 and Galatians 5:20. And we've looked at those. Those are airesis, that's translated as heresies. So again, a heretic is one that takes for himself and he chooses for himself and he makes his own way. He looks at the Bible doctrine and says, you know what, I don't like that. And then what he does, he goes into the church and he starts pushing his doctrine, his heretical, his erroneous doctrine, which is the doctrine that he prefers. And he becomes argumentative and he wants to fight over the doctrine. That's what a heretic is. One that you can't reason with. He's not willing to listen to anybody. He's made up his mind for himself. He doesn't like what the Bible has to say, and then he's chosen for himself. We've seen all these verses that show how all these words mean to take and to choose. It can mean to go in and take a city. It can refer to a sect of a political group. And what it's talking about in the biblical sense of the word is a heretic is someone that looks at biblical doctrine, doesn't like what he sees, so he chooses for himself and he chooses his own way, and then he becomes argumentative and goes out and forms his own sect. And in other dictionaries that I've read, it talks about this particular heretic setting himself up as the leader of this sect. That's what a true heretic is, one that chooses and takes for himself. So that's the study, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you the next time.